Welcome to the Zwift Insider Tiny Races Microscopic Makuri, starting off with turf and surf, then railway and rooftops, then fine and sandy, and last C2 tree. And boy, that was a terrible one. So, getting ready to kick it off here on Makuri Island, and I don't know why I decided to join these, but I did. It was an experience for sure. And so going into the first race here, started off pretty hard, a lot harder than I expected. But then again, these are short races. They're roughly 3 to 7 kilometers apiece. So not very long. And the group got off to a very strong start. As you can see, we're started off in the 400s, now holding, we're holding 300s for a little bit. Finally started coming together and slowing down a bit. And by a bit, I mean not by much at all. And so I'm doing my best to stay in the draft. You don't see it here on the screen, but I actually have finally got sauce for Zwift. So I've got the draft gauge kind of showing me where I'm at. And as I'm pulling out into the right here, I end up, getting into the wind a little bit. So I start easing up on the pedals and doing my best to look at how I can adjust what gear I'm in and what my position is by slowing down or speeding up to put myself back in back in the draft and really kind of taking advantage of being in the draft for these races because after all, it is 4 very intense races. As you can see, we got the Ghost boost, which basically means nothing. There's a couple people that used it, very cheeky moves, getting into, you know, using it and then kind of sprinting up ahead. The one drawback, as you can see, the person just did here, they just popped up on screen on the front, and then another person did the same thing. The one thing that I would recommend if you're going to use the Ghost, don't have the fire socks, or it is a really cool effect because you basically see just a bunch of flames kicking out with no rider over top of it. So as you can see, the pace got really strong here with those two riders off the front. Everybody decided to chase, and I did not want to lose the wheel of the front group, and so ended up, pushing hard to end up pushing through still, getting to the front and kind of, you know, let myself letting the pack pull in around me. And that's I think the ideal thing that I've learned from, Zwifty Zwifter, Doom Guy, and all these other amazing racers, Nathan, a super strong racer, is letting them just crowd around you. Let the pack pull around you instead of you slowing down. So that way, or instead of you like hitting the brakes and then having to, pedal hard again, just, ease up off the pedaling a little bit, let the pack come around you, and then you'll be, surrounded again. As long as, they don't try and pull that pull that move. So doing my best to. The one thing I really hate about the Makuri Island is all these little undulations. Um, while I'm, very good at staying in the group through those undulations, it sucks a lot of power out of me. You can see because these are shorter races, there's no restraint on how the group goes. So it's generally, people are trying to go all out for every single race. And if you've got the energy to do it, great. If you're me, then you got to conserve a little, but you got to stay with the front group because you don't want to lose. Um, ego always plays a role in how these races go. So just going strong here, getting, keeping keeping in the pack as we go through the arcade and doing my best to just, again, I'm keeping an eye on the draft gauge as well as I do also have the little group dynamic in sauce. And hopefully on the next couple, within the next couple of videos, I'll get it set up so that way it's visible on screen too. Because these are, essentially these are things that I use. These are tools that I use to kind of keep an eye on not only where I'm at, but what kind of effort I'm going to need to put out and whether or not I can conserve some energy. So we're about 2.5 kilometers from the end here, and I'm starting to think about, okay, what position do I want to be in? Where do I want to be in the group? I definitely don't want to be out front where I was at. um, and so I want to contend for the sprint at the end, but not, not sure where this is going. So there's a couple people that go off the front, which good for them, because I was not going to try and push off the front this early in the first of four stage races. And so doing my best to stay here in the pack, and again, playing with what gear I'm in, and you know how quickly I'm pedaling in order to stay in the pack here. So I came across a video recently on it's a channel called Glute Doping, and basically what he talks about is really emphasizing the use of your glutes and your hamstrings to pedal versus your quads. I'm a very quad dominant pedaler, and in races like this where I know I need to go all out for 4 races, I was doing my best to not burn out my quads very quickly. So I kept reminding myself, adjust your pedaling style so that way, I can use my glutes more than my quads. And as we get to this bridge here, I look up and I'm like, oh, we got, 0.6 kilometer left. I need to start hustling, because I'm falling to the back of the pack and these guys are moving fast. And as you can see by my watts, the pace was picking up very quickly. And so as these front guys start going, obviously there's a couple more people off the front that you can't see on screen here, but as everybody starts going off the front, I just start hustling as best I can. And so here we go to race 2. I got, I think, like 14th, 15th, 16th, somewhere around there on that stage. And so here we go on to the railway and rooftops, which again is, I like that. I like the rooftop KOM. I've done it numerous times, not only in the Pinarello Power races, but also in the hill climb races. And so as we get started here, the emphasis is the same. Stay in the group. I don't know because these routes are essentially custom routes. You don't really get too much of a recon to know, where they start and when the climb is coming. In this case, when the rooftop starts. If you know these, if you're the kind of person that rides these worlds a lot, and races these worlds a lot, then maybe you do know. I'm not that person. I'm not good at memorizing how these maps work in the turn-by-turn direction. And so my goal here is just to kind of stay within the group until the KOM starts. I was in a lot of pain at this point. Like, I was hurting more than I thought I would. I only had 2 minutes in between the first and second race to recover. And if you stay to the end, I'm going to talk about what I did for recovery in between the races. It did help me significantly, especially after this race, since I had a little more time. But I think being able to recover quickly in between these races, and having the time to recover quickly in between these races, is really what matters. And so as we start approaching, I'm feeling the pressure from, not only my quads hurting, but also we're starting to hit these little ramps going into Makuri, a little bit deeper into the city. And so on this first ramp, my focus was, I am not going to get dropped. And ironically, Eric was in a different class, in a different category, but racing at the same time. Mr. Don't Get Dropped Cycling, a super awesome guy. Check out his channel if you haven't already come across his channel. I'm sure you have. But that was my thought here: is I'm not going to get dropped. I don't want to stay behind on, for this climb. Going into these races, my thought was, I'm a pretty strong climber when it comes to the rooftop KOM. I should just go for it. I know exactly where to use the power up on this, on that climb. So I was going to go for it. But when I started this race, I completely reversed my decision of going for it. I was not going to go for it. I was hurting. So we get our power up here, and I'm thinking, okay, I know where to use it. I'm going to, keep to that plan there. So I just need to make it to the beginning of the KOM with the group and do as best I can, because my quads were hurting. While I did, emphasize using my glutes a little more, which helped me not burn out my quads, but also helped me with putting down steadier power. especially in the 200s. I was trying to stay in the mid 200s, um, and that did help me stay there with a little more ease. As we start hitting the base of the climb here, everybody starts using their power ups. Well, a lot of people start using their power ups, and my thought was like, nope, I'm not going to use mine yet. I let myself fall to the back of the pack because I knew that I could catch people and pass them as we're climbing. But as you can see on my face, I was in a lot of pain. I ended up, I started off in my big ring, downshifted to the little ring to try and steady my watts here a little bit. You saw my watts go to zero because I was hurting. My quads were hurting. I needed to take a quick break, and that's when I kind of realized that I was not going to make it to the top of this KOM with everybody. So my focus was I was in 17th place, 17 out of 30. I was going to finish as best I can where I was at. If I could catch a few people and pass them, great. But if not, then it is what it is. I was happy with where I was at. And so, as you can see, doing my best to hold in the 300s while I was climbing, but ended up, I basically stayed in the gear that I was in and let my watts drop on the flats of these climbs because I could not. I just couldn't. My legs were so exhausted from that first race and not really having a break that I just could not put out the power I wanted to for these climbs. So I was doing my best to recover on the flats and then push out 2 to 300, staying in the 300s on the climbs itself as best as possible. I did have to kind of stop pedaling a couple times to let my legs kind of catch up a little bit. And so here we go at the top. So there's this second to last, little kicker right before the top of or right before the KOM that I feel like is the best part to use your power boost because it's your legs are already tired by that point, so you might as well take advantage and get that last little bit of comfort, make it as easy as possible going up to the base of the end of the KOM, so you can have energy to cross the line and put out especially with that KOM, since there's a little bit of a flat spot before the banner, you can put out a little extra power knowing that you have the draft or the arrow boost or the feather boost on your side. And so here we go, stage 3. You can see by the way this group went out, we were all exhausted at this point. Didn't go out very hard at all. There's some people that did, but it really wasn't that bad. Started off in the hundreds, 200s, and just kind of quickly settled into, a decent rhythm here, even though we had this first initial climb through the roadway of this beach side. And, we quickly got together and just coasted because we were all exhausted. It was nice going downhill on this part here, be able to recover a little bit from these last 2 races. Now again, I had 4 minutes in between the second and third stage, so I had essentially 4 minutes to recover before we started this one, and I feel like that was exceptional. Like I said, stayed at the end, and I'll talk through what I did for recovery, because you'll see my heart rate went from 170s, 180s to 130 by the time we got going again. And yeah, it spikes up real quick as soon as you start putting in the effort in my case, into the 160s. But I felt better when I got started. Like I didn't feel like I was, didn't have enough to push out and keep the momentum going. And so just trying to stay with this front pack, especially as we go into this climb. This is a oddly difficult climb, even though it's not, percentage wise, it's not difficult. Like it's, I think 4 to 6%, something like that. Maybe max is at 7% in some spots. But average, it's not that bad. But I ended up going into my little ring, doing my best to stay with this group. I was going to push as hard as I can. You got Brian there in the alien gear. Super strong rider. Holy smokes, man. He and I were chatting a bit in the beginning, but super strong rider for this category. And so every time I see him, I was like, okay, I got to catch up to him and we got to stay together. because not only a great dude, but good asset when it comes to being able to help each other move forward. So you can see here, he ends up pulling to the front. So I did my best to catch up and stay on his wheel for a little bit, and knowing that we can catch this front group on the downhill. So that was my goal. I was pushing as hard as I can to catch the front group, pull to the front, and tow him along as well, so that way we can help each other. But man, my quads were burning. So you see me stop here for a little bit, take a quick breather, and then start back up. And Brian ends up pulling to the front, so we kind of play that game and helping each other out to get there. And so he's pulling off the front. I see another guy coming up behind me who ends up, pulling past me, which helps tow me to that group. And that was my focus, is getting on to the back of this front group again, so that way I can contend for the sprint. I do have a pretty mean sprint when I can muster the energy to do it. Unfortunately, I can't do it during races all that often because I'm usually exhausted by the time I get to the finishing sprint. And so I thought this would be a good series for me to practice my sprinting, because, these short races, I didn't think I was going to output, 200% plus FTP the entire time. I mean, it felt like that. It felt like we were just, you know, freight trains on a move, and no one was going to stop us. So watching the kilometers here, got a couple people pulling off the front, getting back into the sand, which probably should have had the gravel bike. Maybe that could have helped in this scenario. But I wasn't thinking about switching gear in between the races. My focus was, race my race with what I had, and I had the Pinarello Dogma 2024 with the Cadex wheels. I feel like those two together are really, really good for racing. As much as I love the DT Swiss wheels, um, I think the extra, couple millimeters in the 65 mil wheels of the Cadex helps with being able to stay on the group and draft a little bit better, and being more aerodynamic. But I've also got to try this. Maybe I'll do the tiny races next weekend with the DT Swiss and see how I feel then. But as we go through the swamp here, again, looking at where the kilometers are at and counting that down so I can launch my sprint. I'm also looking at other guys to see when they're going to launch their sprint, to to kind of gauge, because I know there's some strong guys in this group, and as I saw in the last couple of races, some of these guys can go out from 700-800 meters. I'm not that guy. I can probably hold my sprint 5 to 700 watts range for about 500 meters. Anything above that, I can only really hold it for a couple 100 meters. And so that's my goal. Is I'm thinking, like, can I hold on as long as I can? But as you see, some guys start coming through, people start using their aero boost. We're at 400 meters to go, and I'm thinking, like, I gotta do it. So I use my aero boost and just push as hard as I can. End up, taking a breather here real quick and just launch the second wave, with my sprint, which landed me 5th place in this stage, which I could not believe. I was so excited that I got 5th place, because I wouldn't have thought I could do that with as exhausted as I felt. Like I told Brian in the beginning, if I make it past the second stage, I will be excited, because I knew the rooftop and railways I was going to push hard on, or railways and rooftop. I was going to push hard on. So here we go, last and final race of this series, which I completely did not put together the fact that we were going up the temple climb. Had I have known, I probably wouldn't have sprinted as hard on the third stage. I probably would have saved some for this, because I was already exhausted. My quads were on fire. And when we started the route, because I have ZMS Esports Studios on a second device that I was trying to pay attention to their broadcast. So they talk through the different stages and what's to come, and for whatever reason, I didn't like catch the fact that this was a Temple KOM, which I had just recently done on a hill climb club race. And so as we left the gate, I'm looking and I'm like, okay, I'm familiar with this route. Are we going up to KOM? And I'm starting to let myself fall off the back here because I'm looking at the mini map and following the guy that, as Brian pointed out, basically TT'd off the front and just left us behind. And so I'm looking at his little dot, and as we're coming up to that left, I'm looking at his dot thinking, okay, is he going to be making the left? And if he does make the left, then I know I've got to conserve some power. And as he does, I was like, all right, I'm going to let my wattage drop. I'm going to let everybody pass me because I'm going to need the energy to be able to complete this climb. And as we hit the sand here, and I saw the beginning of the climb, I was like, all right, here we go. Try and do my best on this KOM. And I was hurting. I was in so much pain at the start of this climb. Shifted into my little ring, especially as this guy with the multiple sprint jerseys passes me, which I don't know how he got multiple sprint jerseys already. Um, but so as they pass me, I'm thinking like, all right, I'm in 20th place, no big deal. I can pass some of these guys when I'm climbing. Because again, I have gotten better at climbing, and I've seen myself be able to output out output watts, output strong watts a little bit better. And so as we get the climb going, I'm focused on, if I can stay within the 300s, I know I'll be able to pass people, um, especially in this category where I'm at the top end of the points when it comes to Zwift. When it comes to the Zwift racing score, I'm in the upper 390s. I think my score went from 353 or 354 and it spiked up to 394 for whatever reason because I hadn't done any races at that time. Um, and this race was up to like 410 or something like that. So I was in the upper end in terms of points. So I knew I was going to be able to pass some people on this climb. Um, and again, I just recently done this climb, so I knew when and where to put out as much effort as possible. But like you see on my wattage, my best effort was in the low 300s because I was absolutely exhausted. And so me and this person in front of me, we keep playing, hopscotch or leapfrog, however you want to put it. Super strong rider. He just, you know, I would go hard on the higher percentages, and then he would catch me on the lower percentages, and then kind of go around me, and then we just kept doing that back and forth almost the entirety of the climb, which helped me stay focused on getting to the top. So as I'm seeing, this is the hardest part of the climb. On a couple moments, kind of let my cadence drop to almost nothing because it just in so much pain. And so doing my best to focus and get up these percentages, knowing that these little flat spots, I can recover a little bit. I can spin my legs out. I can let my wattage drop and recover a little bit, which ultimately allows um, the person behind me to kind of, again, we kept playing leapfrog, hopscotch, however whatever game you play, however you put it. And so as we come to the flat spot here, shift into my 53 tooth ring to try and maintain a little bit of speed. I didn't want to fall too far behind off of these two guys because I know I can catch them on the next series of climbs. And so doing my best to recover as much as I can, let my legs spin out. Again, passes me, no big deal. Downshift into 39 gear ring or 39 tooth ring and start putting on the pressure again in the mid 300s, upper 200s, low 300s. I knew I could hold that up these climbs. And so that was my focus, is just staying in that range, up these, couple hard percentages, even if it meant, letting my cadence drop and push really hard. And so as we start rounding this corner, I'm thinking, okay, almost done. I see the flat spot where I know the banner is. So all I got to do is just get past these next couple guys and go as hard as I can on that final stretch to the banner. And so as we get up towards the top of this part, I end up switching into the 39 tooth ring, so I can just push and keep that pressure for myself. I see the guy behind me, A Tinny, and I saw he was, 10, 20 meters behind me, and I was just thinking, all I got to do is just keep him there. If I can keep him there, let myself kind of rest a little bit before the end, and just as long as I could keep him there, then I'm good. And sure enough, I can only imagine what he was thinking because he was catching up to me at the end of the line. He probably thought he could pass me at the end of the line, but I got lucky enough to time it perfectly. As you can see here, I finished in 16th place, which was absolutely exhausting. I was dizzy. I was seeing stars. Like, I was near dry heaving. I was so done from this race. So done from this race. And so overall, Brian ended up messaging me in my Zwift companion app. He commented on one of my rides, letting me know that I was overall in 11th place. I was absolutely excited about that. I didn't realize I was in 11th place because I just don't pay attention to that kind of stuff, and I didn't know where to check it. And he, figured it out, and he messaged me. And that's, again, when I went into Zwift Power and saw that I was in 11th place. I initially sorted by category C because that's the pen that I chose. In terms of Zwift racing score, at least I thought I was in the category C, but according to Zwift Power, I was in the D category pen, which is okay, because it is what it is, and I'm still in that kind of transitionary zone. This is this is the longest I had in terms of recovery in between any race. So part of what you need to do with these races is you need to get into the next pen as quick as possible, so you're not struggling with what you need to do. So as you can see here, I got this massive white PVC pipe on my handlebars, and I'm drinking a shake. And so I don't, I do my best to not eat carbs. That's just that's just me. That is, that's just my choice. My choice of eating style. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. I probably should have had some carbs on this because the way the body works is energy use is not static. It's not you're only using carbs, you're only using fats. It's you are using a blend. Zone one, zone two, you're using mostly fats, a little bit of carbs or glucose rather. And then as you get into upper zone three, you start transitioning into using more glucose than anything else. You're still using fats as a fuel, but you're um, you're using more glucose than anything. And then as you get into zone 4 and 5, you're using glucose. Zone 5, upper zone 5, you're starting to use more oh my god, why did that name slip my mind for a second. um, you're using lactate. So lactate is a fuel. It's not what causes your muscle cramps or pains. So lactate is a fuel. So again, I've got my electrolyte water with me, trying to hoover that down. I've got it. There's a Dr. James D. Nico Antonio talks about pre-hydration, which basically talks about cooling your body temperature internally by drinking, super cold water with electrolytes. The electrolytes help, not only hydrate you, but it also increases your plasma volume, which helps cool you down. So I'm doing that as well as drinking a protein shake with MCT oil in it to try and preserve my energy as much as possible. For those in the keto carnivore community, you know that MCT oil helps with adding energy, since it's basically a triglyceride, which is a ready to use, you know, fat for energy. And so the last part of my recovery strategy here was using that PVC pipe in front of me that has a cooling mat. And basically what Dr. Andy Galpin as well as Dr. Andrew Huberman talk about is in the palms there are blood vessels. So your artery and veins actually have a little bridge in between them that allow blood to kind of flow directly from one to another. And if you can cool your palms at the right temperature and at the right rate, you're able to actually bring your body temperature down. And as you can see here, my heart rate is already in the 130s a minute before we start this next stage. Um, And what that ends up doing is it allows you to not only recover faster, but it also allows you to output the same effort repetitively. So you can essentially repeat your efforts continuously with, without exhausting yourself. I mean, you will exhaust yourself, but it helps preserve that exhaustion for later. So thanks for watching, and let me know what you do to recover on races like this.